Welcome to the Ontological Experience, a space for connected, authentic conversations about the ontological framework and tools. I'm your host, Mark Robertson. All right, so welcome all my the Ontological Experience viewers and listeners to the next really fantastic episode. I'm really excited today because of the person that I happen to have on the episode today, and also about what we're going to talk about, which on some level, I don't know where we're headed, but I know it's going to be really, really good. At least it always has been for 4 or 5 months now since I met Matt from my experience. To start, though, you don't know this as viewers or listeners, but it's like 7:30 here in Nashville, and I never do anything before 8:30 or 9 o'clock. So that should tell you about the guest that I have on the show that you can see today, who I'm about to introduce. Like, I've just been wowed by him and what he's up to and the impact that it's had on me. And so I was like, I got to have him on here. So I was willing to schedule a 7:30 call. So that should tell you something. So today, Matt and I are going to have a great conversation about one of the three dimensions of ontologically, what we call the way of being. Remember, our way of being is a combination of our language and our emotion and our body, and they're always interconnected, interwoven, congruent, and coherent. And so we are going to mainly be talking about the body dimension. And yet, as we know so far, we know about the ontology. When one changes, the other go with it. So we also will be probably talking about emotional impact of that and the language impact in terms of thinking and how we speak and that kind of thing. So today, let me introduce, I have the honor of having on the show Dr. Matt McEvoy. Matt, along with his colleague, Dr. David Edwards, created an amazing medical practice that I found out about at the end of June. So it's called Paradigm Health. It's based in Franklin, Tennessee, in the Cool Springs area, and it's phenomenal. And so Matt and David founded this, I don't know exactly how long ago. He can tell us about that. Matt's a doctor, been a doctor for quite some time. And so I'm honored to have him on here. He's my doctor in my work with Paradigm Health. And what I'll say about how I speak about Paradigm Health is they are my concierge functional medical practice that I found out of need, but also realized, wow, this is what I've been looking for decades. And so got Dr. Matt McEvoy with me. And the more important introduction that I want to do with Matt is one that he sent me. As y'all know, I'm not a fan of reading bios, but listen to this. This is his better bio. Matt is married to Amy, the love of his life. They have 5 children and 4 grandchildren. He's a doctor who loves making his patients well. And that doesn't even begin to speak about what he does with his patients. He also likes reading, gardening, smoking barbecue, hunting, and fishing. So look at this guy. Would you have imagined that that's what he likes, hunting and fishing? So, and he really likes Mark Robertson and the word ontological and Belgian beer. So that Matt is a dude of dudes, and we have dudes on here. So Matt, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah, it will. It'll be a really, really fun conversation. So to kick it off, let me just give a little history on how I met you and why you're on here and why it's changed my life, as cheesy as that may sound. Back in, I think, May of this year, I've been putting off getting a cardiac CT scan, and been putting off for 4 or 5 months, just timing wise. Finally, I did it, and I got a call from my doctor's office. Your doctor needs to speak to you soon. And I was like, uh-oh. And so I talked to him, and he gave me my score on the scan, and it was over 400. And turns out I didn't remember this, but I had taken it in 2020, and my score was like 32. And I was stunned because I had, for the last 5 years since my knee replacement surgery, had really focused a lot on my health and getting well, and quite candidly had made a lot of progress, but was surprised at all the new behaviors I'd taken and that I was probably the healthiest I had been, and my score was that. I was shocked. And so I was like, wow, I need to address this. So I began searching for how to address that. So ontologically, we would call that a breakdown in life. When you have those oh shit moments, whether it's health or anything else, it's like an oh shit moment, and it was serious. So I was like, I got to handle this. So I began exploring options to do that because I just didn't feel like my primary provider in the current healthcare system were a good option. I made an appointment as he recommended for a cardiologist, but truth is I didn't really want to go to that. I wanted to explore ways to handle it differently. And so I was having lunch in this process of search with my one of my best buddies, Richard Hunter's wife, Christy. She's a health coach, really healthy person, and she said, "Hey, I just heard about this place in Cool Springs called Paradigm Health. You ought to check them out." And I remember as I was having the conversation, I had already started zeroing in on some other place. So I was like, yeah, maybe I'll do that. And we left lunch, and somewhere in the next 24 hours, something said to me, you need to call Paradigm. So I reached out, talked to their manager, Kate, who's awesome. Everybody there is awesome. And talked to Kate about it. And then she said, you can have an hour free consultation with a doctor. And I remember thinking, wait, what? Like, who does that? And I was like, I'll take it. And so I set up an appointment within a few days and went to their offices and sat down with Matt. And we had a conversation, and I shared why I was there and wanted to know about you. And you shared a bit about your history and how Paradigm got formed. But this is the part that I need to share. Um, I have long thought, the medical system is messed up and broken, in so many ways. And yet that's what we've got to use. And Matt and I were talking, and this is what comes out of this guy's mouth. He says, look, he said, we're just curious about the human condition. We're humble about, and this is my interpretation, humble about how we approach that. And we don't want to do any harm, but we're open to pretty much everything. And we are knowledgeable and we're research back. And so we're going to share all of that with you too. And I was floored. I don't know if you remember this, Matt, but shortly after I stopped you, I said, wait, I said, I did the Jerry Maguire on you. I said, you had me at curious and humble. I literally said that. And so I would ask my viewers and listeners, when's the last time you heard the words curious and humble come out of a doctor's mouth in the same sentence or consecutive sentence? I literally have shared this story with friends, and their answer to that is never. Mm. And I said, and that truly was it. I was like, I was signing up. I knew I was in, and it's pay out of pocket. It's not inexpensive, but I knew at that moment, I was like, I'm in. You got me. And so the rest has been amazing. And I'm not going to share my part of that because I want y'all to hear from Matt. But the last part I'll share is I do remember actually at the end of that conversation getting emotional because I said to you after we talked and I said, I want to thrive and I'm not thriving. And I think you were like, we can get you there. Yeah. So that's how I met this guy. And so you can see why I'm excited to have him on here. And the results these last 4 months have been incredible. So Matt, handing it off to you, I would love for you to tell my viewers and listeners, tell your story about how you got to Paradigm and why you created Paradigm.
Yeah, well, thank you. And first, I would say that was a really fun and special moment. I'm looking at the table where we were sitting, right?
Yeah.
And just being in the space, it's just such a fun memory. And we really like for our patients to feel like family and friends. And so it has been a fun 4 months. And the other thing I would say is you've made great gains, and what may come out sometimes in these conversations is, well, that's great, but wow, that you tell me a lot of things to change, and we realize on our side that in some ways we have the easy side of things, right? Our is to present the evidence, but probably the same in what you ask people to do in your coaching practice. The work itself can be hard, and so I would say kudos to you for the work that you've put in.
Thank you, man.
And you're one of the best emailers when we go back and forth with our exchanges when you get on a new question about VO2 max or something else. So
yeah.
So why did we start it? In some ways, because David and I, and now Kylie Conroy, she's the third physician in the practice. She just joined us, and she and David both are
Awesome.
just amazing. We wanted this, and I think when you're
Mm,
maybe not in middle school and high school, but as you're a kid thinking
mm,
about being a doctor, I think that there's this sense of being able to help people and doing that in the context of relationship, at least to
mm.
me, is something that's beautiful. And then you go through training and you honestly learn, I would say, both a lot and very little of what I currently practice. And what do I mean by that?
Wow.
Um, I think if you pay attention during medical training, 4 years of medical school, somewhere between 4 to 7 years of residency, that um, you actually are getting trained on how to think and synthesize data if you'll do that well. If you don't do that well, then you end up just graduating with a corpus of knowledge that you're convinced you know what to do. And the day you graduate, it's at least probably 5 years old. And
Mm,
and so you go, it's sort of like, back to the two roads diverge in a yellow wood sort of thing. And you either say, I'm going to become by God's grace here, but like humble, curious, and go, the evidence is probably going to change over time, right? In medicine, even the best of studies, we have things called p values, which is like, what's the likelihood that our finding here is right?
mm.
It could be disproven in the future, and we need to be open to that. Or then there is I've learned that knowledge, it's fixed, and I'm probably not going to veer from that. I mean, to the I forget the word that you used earlier about sort of the moment where uh, you were kind of presented with the calcium score and a need to,
Break down the oh shit moment.
right. So it's kind of those sorts of things, and David and I had both been in academics for roughly 20 years apiece. And we ended up working together at Vanderbilt for close to a decade and just had this itch and this yearning as we were, both seeing patients, but also building teams and building, processes, new clinics, et cetera, to say something should be different.
Yeah.
And Vanderbilt was great to both of us, but in some ways, I think we went as far as we could in traditional modern medicine,
Yeah.
to say how do we take this growing and expanding body of knowledge? How do we have the time to do the work that we want to do with patients?
Hmm.
And so we'd been thinking about it for actually and planning it for a couple of years.
Mm.
And then in really January of 23, we set out on a business plan, talking with people, making sure there was a real appetite for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then getting some positive signals, said, okay, we knew by early to late spring we were going to, be separating from Vanderbilt. And then we officially left right about 2 years ago and
Okay.
launched into Paradigm. And,
Yeah.
you know, um,
Yeah.
and so it's been a fun and wild ride. We thought we were going to open the doors to our clinic in January, February, and through a series of, just literally drywall going on the walls and Franklin City sitting on permits for a bit. It ended up being June of 24. So it's almost 18 months we've been open. And
Okay.
it's just been great.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
our goal is just what you said. We want to be and believe that we are research backed, evidence based, um, spanning. I would say what people would think of as traditional medicine. I mean, there are some things that are pretty unambiguous, and we say, hey, here's a way we can reduce your risk of these things happening, and we could get into
Mm.
with the body what those things are.
Yeah.
But we also want to get back to what we think is the core of medicine. And if you think of the word hospital, it actually comes out of the idea of hospitality. I mean, we think of medicine 3.0 as this burgeoning new thing, medicine 2.0, sort of from when antibiotics, insulin, other things started to be really game changing in the early 1900s. to mid 1900s. And if medicine 1.0 is before that, and it's sort of folk medicine, um, for centuries, there were people who would go and be with those who were suffering. And
Yeah.
were literally, they didn't offer much other than presence and hospitality. And so
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
there's a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. It's actually about the restaurant industry, but we have all of our team read that, anyone that we hire. And so our goal is we kind of say to be sort of Four Seasons level of hospitality, Amazon efficient as much as possible, meaning, you email me, you text me, we try to get back to our patients quickly. It's
Yeah,
not,
you do.
I'll see you in 6 weeks sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then pair that with the latest evidence.
Yeah.
And some of that evidence would be pretty accepted by medicine 2.0, and other parts of that we practice would be more in that cutting edge space where we think that the humility and the curiosity has to be there because the evidence is still developing, but we
Yeah.
really try to meet our patients where they are. And we've got everything from uh, people who qualify for the Boston Marathon and are trying to, just really continue to optimize performance, all the way
Dial it in.
people with stage 4 ovarian cancer and are looking for, you know, um, given this, are there ways for us to modulate the immune system through nutrition and things called metabolic oncology? So we try to take whole span and build our practice in a way that we have the time to really get to know the person.
Man, that's so much. I could go so many different directions with all of that. As I'm listening to you, I'm like, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that a little bit. Let's go here for now. There's a beautiful intro. I had never heard the hospital definition and the hospitality. You shared that with me, and I was blown away. I was like, in a way, it validated for me what I've always thought it should be. Medicine should be. I was like, yes. And then the idea of like, I want a relationship with my doctor and I want to be able to communicate with my doctor. And y'all deliver all of that and more. And so that was amazing to hear. And I'm glad you brought that up today. What I want to address now, though, is you use some terminology that I want to make more transparent to our listeners, which is medicine 3.0, medicine 2.0, medicine 1.0, right? And so this may be a complex question, so take it where you want. But my assumption is that terminology is used by Dr. Peter Attia in his book Outlive, right? So the idea, I think that a lot of your practice or all of it is built upon that framework. Just like we have an ontological framework and tools, you have that framework and tools, which is medicine 3.0. We currently largely live in a world that's entrenched in medicine 2.0, and I think we're seeing the breakdown of that all the time. And more and more people that I talk to are like, I need something different than this. This just isn't working, right? So I want you to maybe talk a little bit about how sort of aligned you are with that philosophy. Was that the driver for why you did what you did? But then also talk about, I was amazed at talk about how you literally set up your facility and what it offers because it's aligned with that, and how you set up your practice to align with that. I know that's a lot, but take it and run.
Um, so I'll get to that. I'll throw out real quick. You're going to have to help me think through hearing you articulate it. Um, we took a word, hospitality, that by necessity is relational, and we have turned it into a structural building with
Yeah.
hospital. And so I have to think about what
Yeah.
it is. Does that mimic the experience people feel in medicine, or something like that? So, well,
Let
maybe.
me just I hate to interrupt, but let me say something really quick to that so I don't forget it. That is the experience I get the very first time I opened the door and walked into your office. Like, and I'm gonna give credit to where credit is due. Naomi
Oh
is
yeah.
spectacular. Like, she embodies that. But I watched, I mean, you know me, I'm a coach, I'm an observer, I'm watching. But everybody else that works with you, Kate, Griffin, Catherine, I mean, when I met you, everybody embodies it. And so I just want to say you've done an amazing job. You have created that relationship experience in your structure. So go.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. Yeah. So it's funny when uh, David and I, as academics, I mean, one of the things you do is you're writing research grants and you're publishing papers and you're often teaching trainees and you're seeing patients as well. So, but you're in this world of knowledge appraisal, knowledge generation. Both of us had been well steeped in sort of the educational side with medical students, residents, which is what you do residency after training. And then if you go beyond that, you do fellowships. And so, uh, in our minds, whenever we're thinking about stuff, it's always okay. Now we create a curriculum, and then who do you go teach next? And so we're sort of in our experiences starting to do this. And what's often funny and humbling is then when you stumble upon somebody who's already created an entire lexicon for the whole thing and
Yeah.
done better than you. And I would say that's Peter Attia. I mean, you know, I think our paradigm model, whereas if listening to him, I get a little bit of the sense is he um, has his practice and has built it very successfully, but also has chosen to take the role of author and
Yeah.
podcaster. And he really, I think, created a lexicon that quite honestly is affecting millions of lives in a positive way.
Absolutely.
We are taking that, and I'd say I think more of our model is to say, well, let's go sit on the operational front line and try to figure out, can we take that, make a curriculum for physicians and help as many people who are actually dissatisfied in their career as possible to get this spark again and
Interesting. Okay.
practice medicine 3.0.
Okay.
So what does medicine 3.0 really mean? Uh, I think in its purest sense, it does not divorce itself from the great gains that have been made. I mean, if you look at everything from clean drinking water to antibiotics to what ties in here for us is as we were creating this space, um, and David and his wife Amber brought their perspective into this along with me and my wife Amy. And from my side, one of the things Amy said is if we're going to do this, we have to remember our own experience, which was our youngest daughter,
Mm.
Ansley, had stage 4 lymphoma when she was 4 years old. And
Wow.
we went through a little over a year of chemotherapy, and she is great now, freshman in college, and
Mm.
doing wonderful, as are all of our kids. But it even being on the inside of medicine 2.0, and even knowing how to advocate at certain points, it while many of the people we encountered were warm and wonderful, the system itself,
Yeah.
the culture was pretty cold.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that Amy would say as we physically built out the space was it needs to represent what you intend relationally.
I
And
love it.
form follows function. And so do we have patient rooms? Yes. Can, if you come in with a cold, can it sort of feel probably like a doctor's office? Sure.
Yeah.
You and I know that we spend very little time there, and you're spending either more time in a consultative session where we literally have big TVs on the wall so you and I can look at your data together rather than
Yeah.
me owning it and you just being on the other side of the screen.
Or in my case, I spend more time walking up and down the halls, chit-chatting and bothering all your people because I feel so comfortable doing that. Or I bring my dog and Kate watches my dog in her office while I'm meeting with you.
Yeah, we it's really funny now that the things that David and I intended are have been birthed, right? Like we had this sense that people might say, yes, we're Paradigm Health, and there's a reason for that. Our aim is not health care delivery, it's to promote health. And paradigm comes from, Thomas Kuhn's the theory of scientific revolution.
Scientific revolutions. Yeah. I was going to ask you that, but
Paradigm shift came from, right? You're
yeah.
you're in a current model and there's enough new evidence coming out that you've got to either choose to just bury your head and say no, the old model works, or you get to this point where there's a break, and in the new model then there's some uncertainty and
Yeah.
to figure it out, but that's what we feel like medicine needs. And so your question about the space, it's literally set up as much as possible to represent relationship, to represent welcome. We purposely have round tables in our offices so that
Wow.
there's no head to the table. It's a
Yeah, that's right.
and then as you know, with Griffin and Sarah Catherine, um, we care about heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, brain, you think of the internal stuff. But even if all that's healthy and you can't move or you have chronic pain, then that's going to limit you in life. And so they, get the biggest office space, as it were, where we have the physical therapy room and the gym and that sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
so, and then there's a little bit of, as you can get your cardiopulmonary exercise test or
Yeah.
VO2 max done here. You can get a DEXA scan here. You can get labs drawn here. So while we have to send you out for some things, our goal is this idea of like, I'm going to Paradigm. And it's, yeah, that's a noun, but it's almost like it's this place where I'm welcomed, I'm cared for.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not just relational, it's also, man, there's really good evidence that's practiced there. But it's, you sometimes hear in medicine, would you rather have a doctor who has a great bedside manner but isn't as knowledgeable, or is a real jerk but is cut? And you're like, it's a false dichotomy. Why, why,
Yes.
why
Why do I
can't,
have to choose?
why can't we work towards both? And,
Yes.
am I the smartest guy in the room? Nope. But,
Probably most of the time, but go ahead.
but, David and I have the commitment. I'd say Kylie as well, and we're hiring a fourth physician in the spring, and we're excited for her to start. Um, but we want to be like voracious consumers of the latest knowledge that's out there. We are trained as scientists to know how to appraise that, and there's a lot of noise out in the space, right? And we
Yeah.
we have the time when people come in and say, "I would never," and just to go not in a challenging way, but how did you get there? Tell me your evidence for that. And
Yeah.
and sometimes that's, I'm 64, my dad died at 64, and it's just a profound personal experience. And sometimes it's their Instagram algorithm has them on the wrong path, and they're just fed stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's times where patients, no one can know everything. So we have people who bring us new stuff, and I have to say, you know what? I don't know a lot about that, but in our model, I'll go take a couple hours and spend some time in the literature and come back with a good response. And
Yeah.
so I would say medicine 3.0, though, to encapsulate that, is certainly built on the advances of um, the, a scientific theory, understanding the idea of, we have a question, we generate a hypothesis, we go and test it. And what's the best evidence generated there? At the same time, I think what happened when we started to make all these advancements, right? And the literally the number one killer worldwide still is, GI illnesses and diarrheal type stuff from,
Mm.
and when you think about that, and that's shifting some, but when you think about that, and you went from unclean drinking water to clean drinking water, and you went from not having antibiotics to first generation, well, then I think an impetus started where we just keep dialing in further, further, further into disease. We keep going one step lower and lower and lower microscopically. And I think what happens is you develop a lot of health care that can be delivered, but rarely do people zoom back out and put the whole human back together. And
Mm.
how do we approach you holistically?
Mm.
And in that, because one of the things you can measure a lot of times is, or a common outcome in science can be mortality, and have we changed lifespan in some way? But that's very different than health span, and that's a
Yeah.
thing that Tia talks about, and others in
Yeah.
the space that we do. Is, hey, it's one thing to say you're living longer. It's another thing to say, are you still able to do all the things that you want to do, free of encumbrance by disease or just aging, if it's looked at as a disease?
Yeah.
And um, and I think that's really important, because honestly, when you say those things, that also means our goal is not for you to need more healthcare. Now, there may be a lot of interventions we need, but our goal is that people, one of the things we ask people is sort of WMM, what matters most. And
Mm.
if we get you healthy, help us understand the story that we are helping to advance. And for a lot of people, that's either, time with a spouse or significant other, time with children. As we think about aging, it's often grandchildren or
Yep.
a legacy, or I can still
Yep.
volunteer in the community, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, and so why are these things important to us? Body and brain health, as functional as possible for as long as possible, are important, because what it's doing is then feeding into the ability for people to live those stories the way they want to.
Man, my head's just like, you articulate that so, so well. Once again, like there's so many places I could take it. I want to take it here, though. I want to give an example that of something you said probably a few minutes ago related to how you interact with your patients. Like this is my experience. And I also then want to kind of tie it to the ontological framework as well. So, you know, when we began exploring my where I was at and what I might need to do, even before we did that, it was clear to me you were trying to get to know me and understand me, and to your point, understand what mattered most, WMM, to me. Um, but I remember one of the things we were talking about. I was impressed with when you would respond to me when I would take a really hard position on something, which is not unusual for me as a coach and just a person that likes my ideas and my perspective. And my father was really righteous, and I can go there too. And then you would engage me with a curiosity and well, yeah, I hear that. And let me tell you what the science or the data offers. So quickly I was impressed with, and these guys aren't talking shit. Like they're not talking out of their heads. This is ontologically, these are judgments backed up by facts. So we call those well-grounded assessments.
Mm.
You're using assertions, facts to back up your assessments, your judgments, and opinions. And I truly have never had a doctor really do that with me, right? So I was just your way of being and coming back at me in the conversation helped me. An example I would use would be we were talking about statins. And, I had a cardiac CT score that was horrendous. And I was kind of also walked in going, I ain't taking statins. Like, look, dude, help me fix this, but you got to know it ain't going to be with statins. So here you go, solve it. And you were kind of like, okay, hold on a sec. Let me back you up a little bit. So we had that conversation. And so to tie it ontologically, body, emotion, language, right? I had a body that was breaking down. The language side, my internal belief and thought pattern is there's no way I'm taking a statin. And I was holding it with an emotion of certainty and dug inness. So like you were encountering that way of being clearly. And I don't remember what you said, but I remember at some moment in that conversation relaxing that belief and going, that makes sense. I'm going to take a statin, which honestly, at 59 years old, I mean, I think I told you this, like I swore I would never do that because I thought it was a pharmaceutical scam. And when I got my first test in 2020 and the score was 32, I said, look, here's proof that I'm right. Knowing that genetically I have high cholesterol from my mom's side. And I was like, I'm right, so I just kept on my way. And then for me to go, you know what? I got to take a statin. That was a massive shift for me, and it was because the way you engaged me in conversation and the relationship we were already building. And one of the things that when people ask me why, I say, well, what I recall, the way I interpreted the conversation was like, there's plaque, right? And you talked to me a lot about where it is and against the walls and all that. And it was a little bit of like, wah, 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 wah. I don't know what he's saying, but I know he's telling the truth. But I remember hard plaque, soft plaque. And I remember like we need to stabilize that plaque because it's the soft plaque that's going to be the problem. And I think that was the thing that I was like, okay, I got this. I need to stabilize it. And that's when I said, okay, I'll take a statin. And so there you go.
Well, and I think, yeah, and maybe for a moment to dive in on that part, because that is sort of our bodies, but then our beliefs and language about it. Uh, You know, as an example, our approach there would be to say, because there's so much emotion around certain things today, one of the things I like to say to a patient, and I think we probably had in our conversation, is sort of what's your hermeneutic, or what's your structural approach to this problem? And for me, it is, I think the data, and this is where we'll bring the data in, is unambiguous that if you get the right panels, right, there's 5 things that are most associated with coronary disease: smoking, high blood pressure, cholesterol, metabolic unhealth, which you could think of as insulin resistance, prediabetes, et cetera, and then inflammatory markers. Are we going to expand on those in the future? I'm sure we are, but those are the five biggest that we know right now. And so first we have to first say, can we agree on that? Because if those are things that we can then affect, that is different to say, I want to lower your apolipoprotein B because I think that if we were to take 1,000 people and we took the group of people that you represent with your ApoB, and then we change those people to be in what we think of as the healthiest group, would that group have fewer heart attacks, strokes, cardiovascular death? The answer is yes. Now,
Yeah.
part of the problem here is I explain to people it's a 0 or a 1 for you. You either die from heart disease or you don't. You either have a stroke or you don't, right?
Yeah.
And you could argue with heart disease, yeah, but you could have enough, you don't have a heart attack, but it slows you down. But the point is either you're affected by it or you're not. And so our approach is, but we have to practice in a way that says, can I lower your risk? I tell some people sometimes, I'm like, did you ever need your children to wear a seatbelt? Were you ever in a crash where if they didn't, it would have been fatal? And for most people, the answer is no,
Yeah.
but we still put on seatbelts. And so just to say, if that approach, that's sort of the risk-based approach, and it could be true, you could drive for 40 years without wearing a seatbelt and be fine. I don't think that totally applies to cholesterol, but even if we took that framework, what I first try to establish is the thing that we're trying to change, do we agree with that? Because that's one thing. Then there's the toolbox of things to change it. I mean, I can drive a nail into the wall with a regular hammer,
Yeah.
3-pound sledgehammer. I can use the back of a screwdriver, not very efficient.
Crescent wrench. Yeah.
And so then we get into statins versus Edia or Repatha or whatever. But to me, if I can, because there's so much out there and I want to understand where someone's come from to have a strongly held belief. Like if you sit there at night, do you have a lot of emotions about different tablets that exist in society?
Tablets, like,
Capsules, tablets, random pills. Do you
oh,
No, like they're right? It's just it's not something you sit around, but statin to you had emotion attached to it.
oh yeah. Well, pharmaceutical,
Okay.
all that
Exactly.
stuff.
And so then we talk about the fact that I'm on a statin. I'm also on something called berberine. The statin is actually 10 times as cheap as my supplement that's natural.
Yeah.
So
Right.
businesses are out to make money. But if we have time to have those conversations and say, let's first agree on the health goal. Because the truth is, if through the exercise that you're now doing, the diet that you're now doing, the sleep that you're now getting, maybe other stress reduction, if we get your cholesterol to goal, we don't need the statin. There's other tools in the toolbox.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that that's our hope in our practice too, is we have that time to say, let's walk through what we're trying to fix and what tool we might bring to bear. And then there are some people who still say, I hear what you're saying, but it's still a strongly held belief for me. And then we do shared decision making and say, okay, let's consider other tools.
Well, and one of the things that became clear to me in the midst of all these things that became clear to me was you're like, listen, we're gonna have a conversation, but it's your choice. You decide. I want to draw out the ontological piece or the human piece to this that again I think you set out to do and you're doing so well. One of the other reasons you reminded me of why I chose to go ahead and take a statin was you said I'm taking a statin and I take berberine and I do these things. And to look at you, it's like, holy shit, you do that? It's like, and so I was like, wow, in a way, as simplistic as if I want to look like that guy, like, and he's doing it, it must be okay. That kind of simplistic thinking, right? But what I want to draw out is more the importance for people to hear, like, vulnerability, your willingness to be honest and transparent. These are the qualities that are the most important for me in life, Matt. Authenticity, transparency, relationship. The ontological piece talks about all relationships start, maintained, deepened, or eroded by conversation. And you, as a person, bring all that to the table, and your whole practice brings all that to the table. So I just wanted to highlight that for my listeners because they're ontological people and they'll dig it. I just want them to know, amongst many things, this is also the experience you're going to have if you work with these people, right? And you work with Matt and you work with David and now Kylie. And so, yeah, I wanted to mention that. And it, it it's, I think I said this to you in the initial conversation. It's playing out. Like, I've been waiting to have this conversation with my doctor for over 3 decades. Part of why I got emotional was like, finally, I'm not crazy. There are humans out here that look at it this way and can help me. So that was really, really, really amazing. You know?
Like,
Yeah. I had another thought that at my almost 60-year-old brain, which I turned 60 on Tuesday, by the way. It escaped me, but it'll come back. Let me go here. What, as I was listening to you, I was thinking, what is it about this guy and probably David and Kylie? Like, you're different. You're not, I think when my listeners are listening to you and watching you speak now, they're going to, this is not your normal doctor. What is it about you and or your ability to be inside that framework and see what was working and what's not working, and that you and David had enough courage, or I would even say boldness, to step out of that, when I think maybe there are a number of people like you in that world, but they wouldn't do that.
um, I don't know. I would say that there was, just a dissatisfaction with, like, there's more here, and I would say, David set up, a lot of clinics. I think it was about 9 new clinics in 6 years while he was at Vanderbilt. He's a real innovator, and what he would do, particularly in a space that people didn't like to be in, but in the chronic pain space, is he wanted to bring together not just, "Okay, we can do another block or we'll give you medicines," but he brought in, pain psychologist. He brought in physical medicine and rehab. He brought in the first person to practice acupuncture at Vanderbilt. He brought
Wow.
like, he's like, A, there's evidence, but B, let's take this approach. And I think, without trying to be down on anything, like, the system just isn't set up to let
Yeah.
so he kind of had this, I'm unsettled. And the stuff that I was doing in particular, where we were working to get people who were often quite unhealthy ready for major surgery that they needed, just seeing limits on just the system. And particularly, you could get into insurance payers and all sorts of stuff, which you and I have even walked through with some things. But
Yeah.
so there was sort of this dissatisfaction. And then I think we had found a kindred spirit with each other. And then, if you get, at least for the two of us, if you get anybody together who dreams about what could be, and then you keep putting them together, either they have to kill the dream or they're going to go. And the truth is, I would say, David made me brave enough to go, let's go jump off this cliff together. And,
Nice.
he talked to, Amber, his wife. I talked to Amy, and both of them were like, We understand the people we're married to. And, we know it's risky, but, honestly, I think maybe we made each other brave. And,
Hmm.
Amber and Amy, who, believed enough too to say, "We're with you. It'll be a wild ride, but sure." Because we had, pretty stable careers and things were going well with what we were doing. But it was just this, like, I'm either gonna have to maybe change some of my beliefs and my language and sort of this hopefulness of what could be, and then think about what that would maybe mean for me for the next 25 years, or I'm
Yeah.
gonna do this thing that's a little risky. And then you find that same thing when you talk to Kylie. Um, and,
Cool.
in fact, her story is, it's funny. She's a physician. She actually came in, had booked some stuff to do, like a DEXA scan and a VO2 max, and then basically said, "Look, I'm basically here because I'd like to work with y'all," and, gave us her resume. And,
Beautiful.
we were like, yes, this is the type of person we need." And so,
Yeah.
I'm interviewing, but, like, it was just so clear from the beginning, like, Y it's funny, I don't even know that we're building a team. I think we're just discovering it. Like, 'cause
Mm.
you meet the people, and just like you said with Naomi or Kate, or, Caroline,
Yeah.
with, Griffin and Sarah Catherine, and,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
that it's you go, yes, you were already on the team. You just none of us knew it yet. And so
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Sort of, I'll call like the divine unfolding of all of that, the unknown, but the trust that, this is gonna happen. I love the way you language that. It's like, not this, we put together this plan and we've executed it. It's just like they show up when they show up, and it's them, and like, oh yeah, I remember that they're going to be a part of the team versus, oh my gosh. So that's really, really cool. I know you've got a hard stop here in a few minutes, so I'll take us here for the last question, but let me just be explicit. I really want you to come back because we've barely scratched the surface. So I really want to continue this when it works for both of our schedules, if you're up for that. So,
absolutely.
um, I'll lead us to a close with this idea. You mentioned the system. The system, it's like the system won't allow it. You didn't say that, but that's how I interpret it. So I think about the word entrenched. How entrenched the medicine 2.0 system is. You may have individual ways of being, individuals that are trying to operate within that system, that see more possibilities, more ambitious, but the system won't allow it. And you made me think about, ontologically, like, as individuals, our way of being, we're, as humans, we're biological systems. We're these complex systems of body and biology and emotions and language and lots of other spiritual energy. I mean, all that kind of stuff, right? So I just was struck by, there's you got the system that's been created over decades or centuries with thousands and thousands, and then you've got the individual systems that are operating within that. And the power of, I talk a lot, Matt, about entrenched habits and our ability to shift those. So that's one of the things that's been so incredible for me, is I'm stunned how many habits I've already been able to change in 4 months. It's blown me away. I'll give a simple example. I own a food scale that I bought off Amazon, and I never would have imagined that. I decreased my eating out by 70%. I cook. I enjoy it. I took a knife skills class. Like, my nutrition is overall, I'm at the farmers. It's extraordinary just in the nutrition realm, right? Not to mention exercise, cardio 4 times a week, blah, 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 right? So I'm rambling, but I think about systems, entrenched habits, and that idea at an individual level and a collective level. And so I don't know if you want to offer anything to that or something better for us to close today's conversation, and we'll pick it up later.
Oh man. Yeah, I think two things come to mind. And David is always really wise and kind and reminds me, even as we started into this, like, um, there's no, I mean, in today's world, certainly there's a lot of things, even tragedy that's gone on around the insurers and that sort of thing. But he would constantly say, like, we're doing this because it's good, not because there's an enemy. And there's often these dichotomies set up. And so
Mm.
I look at a lot of physicians who are quote unquote in the system, and they're really, I would say across the board, doing the best they can, sort of with what they have. And and so I want to be careful while we do believe we're practicing something that's the future of medicine. I don't want to in any way lessen other people who have
Beautiful.
years
Yes.
of training and study and really are showing up every day in the system that they have and with the tools that they have to do the best they can.
I
Uh,
love it.
and so I think we have to be careful there. The other thing though, there's a writer named Michael Polanyi, a philosopher. I don't know if you're familiar with him. And he was an organic chemist and then became a physician and then became a philosopher. And he talks about boundary conditions, and that's sort of the higher level informs the lower, and the lower informs the higher. Kind of what you were talking about, that from molecules to organelles to cells to tissues to organs. And I think that's true in health systems as well. And so I think for us, that's why we had to step outside of that level that was bound in certain ways and
Yeah.
sort of get into this new thing to say there's a lot more freedom. We're finding where some of the things bind us a bit. I mean, we're growing a new practice and business at the same time. David and I, as owners, want to make sure that everyone is taken care of before us, because people have believed in this and come to work at Paradigm and those things. And so there's all these little things that are impacting this, even though we have this pure idea of what we're trying to do is allow this idea of medicine and health for the patient to flourish. And so we hope that what we're doing is learning in a system and having stepped outside of one into another, even as we're practicing on the shoulders of some people and also creating some new stuff that we're actually really thoughtful about how we do that. You know, one of our core values is individuals. We value people, and that is our patients, but that's also very much so our employees, our whole team. I mean, you've mentioned
Beautiful. Yeah, that all of this comes across, man. It truly it's I feel it in the experience with you. I want to close. Um, this may be cheesy, but I've never done this before on an episode. But like, I got to imagine some of my listeners and viewers are like, I want to explore this, so they want to reach out to you. Like, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
yeah. Well, thank you in some ways for the commercial. Paradigmhealth.org is
Okay.
a website. If you were to reach out and email somebody, it would be Kate at paradigmhealth.org, and that's CAIT
Yeah.
at paradigmhealth.org. And yeah, so would love to hear from you. Would love to have a chance to sit down with anybody and
Yeah. Yeah.
learn a bit
Yeah.
about what we're about.
Like I said, I've never done it, but I wanted to do that because I got to imagine there are people going, this is the kind of medical care I want and people that take care of my health. So listen, it's been an honor. We will continue this conversation maybe next time we get David and Kylie on here. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But man, thank you for taking your time to have this conversation. It's more than I imagined. So I'm honored. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm honored that you asked me, and always enjoy our interactions and back and forth. And although sometimes I have to judge you on your sleep when you're emailing me too late at night, and
Well, that's the one dimension. So it's exercise, nutrition, um, emotional health, supplementation. What am I missing? There's a fifth. Sleep. There you go. That's one recently that with the time change has wrecked me, and I'm still adjusting. Probably because like my dog sleeps with me too, but that's a whole other thing. But anyway, man, yeah. That I so to my listeners, you and I at times email 4 times, 3, 4 times a week. I'm emailing or texting with Griffin. It's extraordinary. So if you're curious, please reach out, and you and I will continue this conversation in the future.
all
All
right,
right, sir.
Mark.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for being part of the ontological experience. Until next time, remember, be yourself. Everyone else is taken.